Episode 48, The Golden Gate Show. This show is being recorded on a beach under the Golden Gate Bridge. That's right, I am in San Francisco, and you are listening to episode number 48 of Mike Murphy Unplugged. Learn, create, move forward. I am your host, Mike Murphy. I'm a one-man band and technology junkie who loves to help people figure things out. The goal of Mike Murphy Unplugged is to help you learn what you need to know in order to create online content so you can move forward in business and in life. Okay, so Golden Gate episode number 48. I am now back recording in the studio, so you should be able to hear a difference in the audio. This show is going to be different, as you may have already guessed, but just let me explain the purpose of this episode and the backstory. I originally planned to record the entire podcast while traveling in California, but decided it was going to be better to record clips and set the stage for future episodes that I record on location. This is the first episode in a series where I record on location using different gear and setups. Think of today as your introduction on how to record a podcast on location, often referred to as mobile podcasting, or how to record a podcast away from the comforts of your controlled studio. I just returned from a trip to California, and the entire intro that you just heard was recorded on the very popular Baker Beach in San Francisco, looking up at the Golden Gate Bridge. And on a travel side note, Baker's Beach is a beautiful spot to photograph the bridge from, but there is a nude beach section just as an FYI. But don't worry, today is all audio, no video clips. The intro audio had no noise reduction or processing on it at all. It is the raw, unedited recording. It was really windy on this beach. I was sitting right out in the middle of it. I wanted you to hear it as is on purpose for comparison's sake. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the beach. I'm going to play for you the Ask Mike Anything clip that I also recorded in the same windy conditions. But what I did was I just applied a very generic preset, the new Adobe Podcast preset that does a little bit of noise reduction. You can find this preset in the new Essential Sound panel in Audition. So let's play what that sounds like. But as always, let's start the show with a question of the week from Ask Mike Anything. For those of you just tuning into the show for the first time, Ask Mike Anything. It's your chance to ask me what you want to know more about. Where are you struggling in your online business? Head on over to mikemurphy.co. Leave me a question and I will answer it in a future episode. Okay, so that was not perfect by any means. You could hear the water, it was hollow, but all I did was put on a generic preset. If I had spent any time with noise reduction and adding proper EQ, I could have improved the sound to make it very usable for a full podcast episode. The rest of today is recorded from my cottage studio, so that's all you have to listen to from the beach. But my whole point of this exercise was to demonstrate that you can record a podcast from anywhere in the world with very little equipment, as you're about to learn. I recorded smack dab in the middle of a very windy beach on purpose, and I could have salvaged the audio if I had to. So let me answer the Ask Mike Anything question as always, and then we're going to get into what my setup was for the Golden Gate podcast session. Here we go. And appropriately, today's Ask Mike Anything question: do you have any favorite travel accessories that you never leave home without? Without a doubt, my number one priority when traveling is power. I pack my power cords, chargers, and batteries very carefully. Here's what I have. So for my iPhone 6, my standalone power chargers that I always have when I'm out and about or traveling is by Anker. I've talked about these before. You plug them in at night, you can get about 2 full charges of the really small one. It's tiny, I love it. I never travel without this Anker. They do come in bigger capacities, so you may want to have the bigger model if you're powering stuff like iPads or you're going to be gone all day. For my Zoom H6 recorder, or if you carry a flash for your DSLR camera, I use Eneloop rechargeable AA batteries, which are the best rechargeables out there. The great thing about Eneloop is that you can charge the batteries full and you can store them for months at a time before you use them, and they're still going to retain their charge if they're not used. This is great, so you can charge all your batteries before a trip and not worry that they've lost any charge before you start using them. Love the Eneloop batteries. Very trustworthy. And finally, for my Canon T5i DSLR, which is the camera that I use when I'm traveling, I always make sure that I have several backup batteries with me and a charger, especially if I'm shooting video. So Canon batteries are definitely the best, but they're also really expensive. So for my backups, I buy from a company called Wasabi. The same spelling as the sauce that you get with your sushi. And I also prefer the Wasabi chargers to the Canon ones because they're really small and they plug right into the wall outlet, unlike Canon's that comes with a cable that can be very easy to lose when traveling. So I like the smaller version for sure. So let's get into episode 48, your introduction to on-location or mobile podcasting. How do you do it? What gear is required? And why did I even want to record a podcast on vacation in California in the first place? Well, reason number one, for those of you who know me or have listened to a few of these episodes, you know that I like to figure things out. Even at home, I switch things up all the time. I use different microphones and configurations just so I know how things work. It is my ultimate goal with this podcast and online business to solve problems for people and teach how-tos of podcasting and content creation in general. So in order to teach, I need to learn the tools myself. That comes from practice and using them in different ways and scenarios. I am your crash test dummy if you want to think of it that way. I figure out what works, what doesn't, and I'm satisfied when I discover the simplest and easy solution that produces the best results. Reason number two, mobile is the future. We have live streaming taken over the internet, and being able to record a live broadcast or podcast is getting easier and easier. Podcast companies such as Spreaker are doing a great job of giving podcasters one-stop shops to record, edit, and publish podcasts with one platform. I think we're only going to see more of these mobile solutions pop up, and the only way I can understand and get first-hand knowledge is to do it myself. Learn the pros and cons and challenges, and then come up with a solution or workarounds that I can pass on to you. And reason number three, if you go back to the Why Show in episode 22, I share one of my long-term personal goals of someday being able to travel around the world running my online business and podcast from anywhere. Location-independent business. It's something I'm working towards eventually. No rush on that. But again, everything takes time and effort, and when you have the opportunity to test the waters or challenge your comfort zone, you have to jump on it. As soon as I learned I was heading to San Fran, my tech nerd alert gets excited, and I thought, hey, perfect opportunity to record a podcast on location. No big deal if it worked or not. It's the trying that matters. So why might you record on location? Well, you might want to do some impromptu interviews or man-on-the-street style at events or trade shows or meetups. Maybe you're a business podcast. You have the opportunity to interview a CEO or someone important at their office. What are you going to do? Maybe you want to travel around the country in an RV and bring your podcast on the road. So there are many scenarios and reasons why you may find yourself wanting to record your podcast or audio away from your home studio. It's getting more and more common. And there are also endless combinations of gear and devices that you can use to record podcasts on location. Today I'm going to share with you the very simple setup that I used in California. And in future episodes, we'll tackle things such as using your iPhone and iPad and other devices. Finally, onto the gear that I used for the San Francisco Golden Gate podcast. What did I use? For the podcast itself, quite simple. I used my 25-year-old Shure SM58 dynamic microphone, a classic. I had a $5 wind foam cover on it. I used a very basic on-stage mini tripod that has a shock mount. Very simple. The SM58 microphone was plugged into my favorite piece of gear. That is the Zoom H6 handy recorder. It had 4 AA Eneloop rechargeable batteries powering it up. I used my Apple earbuds for monitoring the sound, which is not ideal to use, but it's what I had. That's it really for the podcast recording. Pretty simple, right? I had my 9.7-inch iPad Pro to house my script so I could read something while I was recording the podcast. Now that Scrivener is on the iPad, mobile podcasting and script writing just got a whole lot easier and enjoyable for me. So I'm really happy having Scrivener, the writing tool that I use, available on my iPhone and iPad. So I did use the iPad to kind of keep me in check. But that really is it. I had the Shure SM58 with the windscreen on the mini tripod sitting on a rock. Next to that, I had the Zoom H6 recorder that you record the sound into a little memory card, the same thing that I use for my camera. Pretty basic. I used an XLR cable from the Shure SM58 into the Zoom H6, set the levels, and I started recording. So why did I choose this microphone? Well, the SM58 is a dynamic microphone. They do a much better job of rejecting the side and rear noises, and they generally only pick up sounds right in front of the sweet spot. Nothing is going to reject wind and loud environmental noises of a windy beach, but Dynamics will do a much better job than the very sensitive condenser microphones, such as, say, like the Blue Yeti, or even my favorite Rode NT1. I use my SM58 because I like it. I knew it would get the job done. I could have used my big boy SM7B that I use here in the studio, but it's heavier and bulkier to bring traveling, so the SM58 got the nod to San Francisco. The Zoom H6 recorder, one of my absolute favorite pieces of gear. The Zoom H6 is a portable recorder. It takes the memory card. You can plug in 4 XLR microphones to it if you wanted to. You can have stereo mics on top if I wanted to get some ambient noises, which I did. In fact, the waves at the beginning of this podcast were from that stereo mic. The Zoom H6 is my Swiss Army knife of audio. I often use it to record sound for video. It's called a handy recorder for a reason. One great thing about the Zoom H6 is that you can record straight into it as a recorder, or you can switch it into an audio interface mode and plug it into your computer so you can take the place of, say, a mixer or an audio interface, such as the Focusrite Scarlett line that I like so much. What's great about this setup is that I can record straight into Adobe Audition if I want. The goal of on-location recording is not perfection, but it is to get the best audio quality with the least amount of gear and effort. Or should I say efficiency and simplicity. The less gear you have to cart around, the easier it's going to be to reproduce. So the challenges that we already have talked about, wind and external noises for sure. In a studio environment, you can turn off the air conditioner. I have foam panels on the wall. Here's the deal. If you record podcast interviews in a restaurant or at somebody's home, or better yet, at a nude beach in San Francisco, well, you're going to have external noises around your podcast recording, and for me, that's not a problem if you set the stage up to your audience. I mean, if the audio is horrible and distracting, you have to make that call, whether it's usable or not. I mean, you don't want to tarnish your brand, but your regular listeners will be more forgiving if it's a one-time situation, or if you set it up and say, hey, we recorded this in a coffee shop. You are going to expect that background noise. Just use your judgment. So, in closing here, the real purpose of this episode in the Golden Gate podcast was simply to give you an idea of just how simple it is to actually record a podcast from anywhere. The goal was not try to get an NPR quality sound while recording on location. It just isn't possible. Actually, quite the opposite. I recorded in a very bad situation on purpose. Recording on location is about simplicity and doing the best you can with what you have. Content is going to take priority over the NPR quality all day. So if it's not possible to record in a perfect environment, do what you can in the environment that you have. So the recap of episode 48, which we are going to refer to as part 1 of on-location podcast recording. For gear, I used the Shure SM58 dynamic microphone, a classic microphone, with a standard foam windscreen, plugged in via XLR cables into the Zoom H6 handy recorder, and I monitored the sound with Apple earbuds. And just as an FYI, any portable recorder will do. I just happen to like the Zoom brands. So I had my microphone on a small desktop tripod to minimize shake and vibration, and I only use my iPad for notes. In future on-location episodes, we are going to be using the iPad and iPhone for more heavy lifting, but hopefully today did not confuse you too much, and I hope you have a better comfort level on how to record audio on location. Microphone, recorder, and headphones is all you really need. Not bad, huh? And as always, I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to this podcast. And I'm on a push to meet more of you, so please sign up for my newsletter. You can do so at mikemurphy.co/newsletter if you are not already subscribed to it. And if you have feedback, or you have an Ask Mike Anything question, or you have topics that you want to learn more about, please let me know. You can email me at mike@mikemurphy.co, or just head on over to the website and go to the contact page and leave me a question in any number of places. And I thank you for joining me today. I hope you join my one-man band, and together we can learn, create, and move forward. Cheers.